All right. Student loan debt is in crisis, my friends. And this bothers me something wicked as I got one of my four now going off to college. At least she's going to Georgia Tech for a degree in something, in this case, computer science / linguistics, and maybe math too. But the issue that we have is the student loan debt is horrific. Nobody talks about it. Starting to gain some traction finally. And I'm going to share with you an article in the New York Times I just read this morning that when it comes to retirement planning, you can't plan for retirement if you can't pay your bills as it is today. And so I want to share this with you. And I'm using Google Hangouts Live. Hope this works. I usually go live on just live streaming because I want to bring up an article, and Google Hangouts Live allows me to bring up an article where live streaming doesn't for some reason. Never mind Facebook. Oh my goodness. With Facebook Live, you just want to jump off a bridge, cut your arms and jump off a bridge in a sea of hungry sharks is insane. All right. So I want to share this with the article. So a couple things going on. If you're borrowing money for student loans, you got to ask yourself, what's the return, the ROI, return on investment? And I'm just sorry. The days of just going to college to borrow money to go to college where you're going to get out and you're going to be freaking living large as possible, those days are gone. We know so many students who've graduated with boatloads of debt with a degree in, I have a degree in economics. That's a soft science. Philosophy is soft science. Psychology is soft science. Never mind all the English, history, and all that. Those days are gone. I'm not saying don't study it. I'm not saying don't attain that. I just look, I go to college and get that stuff. Absolutely. Just don't pile on debt. Now, the problem is, how are you not going to pile on debt? And this is where the college thing has made a huge mistake, in my opinion. They keep adding these levels and levels and levels of fluff, these administrators, frankly. And if you're an administrator, I'm sorry, but we have way too many administrators and fewer people actually teaching. And we got more and more adjunct professors. This guy was an adjunct professor at one point at the Virginia Commonwealth University for a semester teaching their CFP program. Nothing wrong with that. But I mean, they pay me $3,000 to teach a course. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But that's where more and more of the education is being done, is bringing on professionals from the business world, essentially, and teaching. And I got no problem with that. But the idea that you need to pay $50,000 a year for that, it boggles the mind. And so I'm just telling you, and I'm telling my kids right now, college just isn't worth it. I just say that. I mean, again, if you have the resources to pay for it, more power to you. If you don't, and you're piling on debt, I tell you too, if you're a grandma or your mom and dad and you're co-signing for a student loan, man, be careful. Those things cannot be discharged, my friends. They can't be. That sucker will haunt you till you're dead. I'm telling you. A long time ago, I used to be in banking, and I was doing car loans at a credit union. This is a long time ago. I was a branch manager. So I could get to do the credit, and I could actually prove the loan. Those days are all gone where people can do that now, but I was able to do that. Now, what would happen is you get some kid coming in there with no credit or just horrible credit, going bankrupt, and he'd bring his loving grandma come down there to co-sign for a loan. And you're just sitting there thinking, I mean, you had to do it, or else, because she had the good credit, she had, the down payment and whatnot, but you just knew what was going to happen is the kid wasn't going to pay. You just knew that. And so grandma wouldn't get paid from the kid, and the kid would just do whatever he's doing. And now you're sitting there saying, Grandma, you got to pay the bill. And she's like, I thought Johnny would pay. Like, yeah, I know, but he didn't. Now we got to come after you. And it's just horrible, because she was relying on him. And a lot of times these grandmas are living on, a Social Security payment of $1,500 a month. They just happen to have no mortgage, thank goodness. But now they've taken on a debt of $400 a month to finance a Toyota Tacoma for some kid. And it's horrible. Anyway, so let me show you this article. I'm hoping I can get this to work. So bear with me, my friends. This is I used to use Google Hangouts a lot before I figured out the live stream, which I like quite a bit. But I do want to go back. So bear with me, and hopefully I don't screw this up. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to go to here, I think. Yep, there we go. And I'm hoping you can see this right here. It says you can. Google Hangouts is sharing my screen. All right, so this is from the New York Times today. The student loan, I probably should have put it on a Google Docs, actually. I need to do that. I forgot when you're live streaming on a website, it's fits and starts. All right, so here's a guy from Ben Miller, who's actually in the Center for American Progress. That's a very liberal think tank. And he's saying, so I just realized that CAP is that's very on the left. And even this guy is saying a student debt problem is worse than we imagine. So what he's saying is, here's 2012, the Department of Education did a study began tracking default rates of students from 2012. They studied it for the 3 years. After 3 years, they only had a smaller amount of default rates, less than 3%. So everyone's like, that's not so bad. And then, but then what happens now is you got 13%. So they stopped tracking after 3 years. But now we see a huge increase without any oversight. The share of schools with high default rates jump sharply. Oh, this is the schools, actually. That's the schools, not the students. So I'm going to share with you the students. And so this one, they start tracking. DOE stops tracking. So everyone's like, oh, it's pretty good. Only 2% of the schools are bad. But now look at this. 6 years later. Well, no, 4 years later. All right. Millions of students will arrive on college campuses soon. They'll share a simple burden, college debt. The typical student borrower will take out $6,600 in a single year, averaging $22,000 in debt by graduation. What does that miss? How about all the people who don't graduate? All right, that's just how much they got in debt at graduation. Tons of people don't graduate. There are two ways to measure whether borrowers can repay these loans. That's what the federal government looks at to judge colleges, and then there's a real story. The latter is coming to light, and it's not pretty. Consider the official statistics. Of borrowers who started repaying in 2012, over 10% had defaulted in 3 years. So this right here, again, that's for the school share of colleges with higher default rates, and this is the actual individual share of students with defaulting on loans. Only 10% after 3 years. All right, but then we have a 50% increase over the next 4 years. Borrowers who start 10% we talk about, that's not too bad, but it's not the whole story. Federal data never before released showed the default rate continued to climb to 16% over the next 2 years after official tracking ended, meaning more than 841,000 borrowers were in default. Nearly as many were severely delinquent and not repaying their loans. The share of students facing struggles is over 30%, my friends. Collectively, these borrowers owe $23 billion. $23 billion, including more than $9 billion in default. Nationally, these are crisis-level results, and they reveal how colleges are benefiting. This is what I want to point out. How colleges are benefiting from billions in financial aid while students are left with debt they cannot repay. The DOE recently provided this new data to over 5,000 schools across the country in response to this guy's FOI, Freedom of Information Act request. The new data makes clear that the federal government overlooks early warning signs by focusing solely on default rates for the first 3 years of repayment. That's the time period Congress requires the DOE to use when calculating default rates. At that time, about 1/4 of the cohort, nearly 1.3 million borrowers were not in default, but were still severely delinquent and not paying their loans. 2 years later, many of these borrowers were either still not paying or had defaulted. Nearly 280,000 borrowers defaulted between years 3 and 5. Again, they stopped tracking after year 3. Federal laws attempt to keep schools accountable are not doing enough to stop loan problems. The law requires that all colleges participating in the student loan program keep their share of borrowers who default below 30% for 3 consecutive years. Well, you can read all the rest. But look at this. Average default rates by school type. Private for-profit. No, that's not shocking. You know, that's the University of Phoenix's, Apollo College. Where's Clinton? He's part of the Laureate University. That's where Clinton is on the board or something like that. Then you got public colleges. And you got private nonprofits, but still, look at that. Still, public colleges, 13.5 after 5 years. And he talks about for-profits have a significant stress. The secret to avoiding accountability, colleges are aggressively pushing borrowers to use repayment options known as deferments or forbearances that allow borrowers to stop their payments without going into delinquency or defaulting. Borrowers at school had high default rates at year 5, but not at year 3, using one of those payment pausing options. So here's deferments. The deferments goes down, and then the number of defaults goes up. And so the federal government cannot keep turning a blind eye. Man, I could not agree with that more. So I think I got to come back here. So I'm going to stop screen sharing, and it should – yeah, sweet. It did work. All right. All right, so basically what this says is if you – they're doing number crunches, and I know like a lot of police departments do this and whatnot. I know there's tons of I mean, remember Wells Fargo? Every single organization crunches numbers to show how bad or good their system is relative to what they're shooting for. Every single one. There's no getting around it. And the same thing at the DOE, Department of Education, same thing at these universities. If you have a kid going to school and he or she's going to study a soft science, I'm telling you right now, it's not worth it to take on a huge amount of debt. You're going to kill that kid. Not you, but they're going to kill that kid when it comes to his own or her own ability to plan for not just retirement, but just to get out from under that debt. It's horrific. It bothers me intensely how much this is. We're preying on an 18-year-old kid backed by all these glorious institutions with all the ivy-covered walls and the huge Taj Mahals that they have. I'm not against higher education, not in the least. I have a degree, I have a BA, and I have a master's degree as well. I got my master's degree from the College for Financial Planning, all done online, all paid for out of pocket. I am absolutely in favor of higher education. I am not in favor of taking on a serious amount of debt to get that higher education. No, sir, Bob. Absolutely not. Unless you're going to a STEM, and we can argue there that some of the STEM things may or may not be overblown. But even that, I would say you don't need, for instance, there's a few years ago, there's no such thing as SEO optimization. There's no job for that. There's no such thing as a guy or a lady telling people how to advertise on Facebook. There was no job for that. All right. No economics professor predicted the rise of SEO optimization, website development, all that stuff. Now there's a huge industry on search engine optimization, ability to do advertising on Facebook, ad agencies that are dealing with all online. None of that existed, and it did not come through getting a college degree. It came through just people saying, here's an opportunity for me. I can do that, and I can get paid for that as well. I'm just telling you, you got to – and that guy's from the Center for American Progress. You can't get further to the left than that than just basic socialism. And he's even saying this, and I think his solution would be different than mine. But at the end of the day, we have a huge crisis, and we've got to stop someplace. Debt is the enemy, and I say it in my book right here, Strategic Money Planning. Yes, I guess this will turn into a sales pitch for this. Debt is the enemy. The very first chapter, and I'll show you for where you can see it yourself. Debt is the enemy. That's the first chapter. Avoid it like the plague. If you want to be free to live the life that you want, you've got to avoid debt. There's no other way around it. All right. Well, I hope this helps. Just a rant for the day. If you like what you see here, don't forget to subscribe. You'll see a tiny little button down there on the bottom right, very, very small. Hit subscribe. Comments are always helpful for sure. Thumbs up, please. And again, I think every day I'm just going to do a little rant on what I see on the various media that I read, because I just read a lot, and then I'll share it with you. So if you like what you see, subscribe. Comments, thumbs up, always helpful. HeritageWealthPlanning.com is a blog, so go to HeritageWealthPlanning.com, and anything I can do for you, just let me know. Thanks, guys.